Hello, this is Tasha 𝐋𝐄𝐒, self-employment tax specialist, business consultant, and entrepreneur educator, owner of 𝐅𝐑𝐄𝐋 LLC, servicing clients all throughout the United States. If you'd like to visit my website, that's �HARDGEConnections.com. Okay, so in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to complete the Form W-4. I have been getting questions about it because it has changed. And then we also have, the younger generation entering the workforce and trying to become familiar with these forms. So if you're already familiar with some of the terminology that I'm going to use, just please forgive, but I just want to cover all bases to the best of my ability so that everyone watching this video can fully understand. So what Form W-4 is, it's the form that your employer gives you to fill out so that they can know how much taxes to withhold for your allowances or exemptions. Those words are interchangeable, okay? And as an example, if you support yourself, you would have them taking out for one allowance. If you support you and your two children, then it would be 3, and so forth, okay? Now, I'm going to go section by section, but that's the gist of what Form, W-4 is, okay? Now, I'm going to skip around and just show, because I want to show this worksheet. For so many years, this worksheet has really confused a lot of people. I usually tell people kind of bypass this, because if you don't really understand each line and what each line item means, it can begin to get really complicated. So you're kind of, okay with just not filling it out, because this is really the only part that matters. This is the only part that lets your employer know how much taxes to withhold, okay, for your situation. So now I'm going to go line by line and show you, okay? Here, obviously, for the most part, some areas are self-explanatory. Your first name and middle initial goes here. In this box, it's your last name. In this box, it's your social security number. Here is your home address, your city or town, your state, and your zip code. Okay, now here's what you do need to be mindful of, which status you're changing, because this form used to have other boxes, but they've updated it for 2018, and that's due to our filing statuses are going to change when we file taxes next year, but I don't want to complicate this video, so I'm just, explaining why this form changed. So the options are going to be single, married, or married, but you want to be taxed at the highest single rate, which I will explain. Okay, so married people get taxed at a lower rate versus a single person. But there are some situations where a taxpayer would prefer to be charged at the higher rate, which is the single rate. So then you check this box. And for whatever purposes, some people would rather that, because it kind of helps them feel a little bit more confident that they're not going to owe any additional tax when it is time to file. So some people just opt to do that. But obviously, if that's not your case, you're either going to check single or married. Now, let me mention something about single status if you are married. You do have some couples who are married, but they're separated. They don't live with their spouse. Now, technically speaking, IRS would still want you to check off married. And when you file your taxes, you'd be filing like married, filing separate. But what some people aren't aware of is that if you have like a separation agreement in place, you can actually check off single, okay? So that is allowed, all right? So I just wanted to point that out. Now let's jump over here to line 4. It says, if your last name differs from that shown on your social security card, check here. And you must call this number for a replacement card. The reason why they say that is because basically whatever your social security card says is what you should be putting here and is what is going to go on your tax return. Tax returns are filed under the name attached to your social security card. So you always want those two to match, and that's why they put this here, because they want clarification to avoid any confusion. Now line 5, this box here is the key winner right here. This is what matters. when earlier when I was talking about if you're going to put 1, 2, 3, or whatever, some people actually put 0, because when you claim 0, they are going to take out the maximum amount of taxes legally allowed per paycheck or whatever, per pay period. And some people just prefer that, again, because it helps them to know or feel, okay, when it is time to file, more than likely I won't owe. So some people do put 0, but this box is the key number. That's the magic number. So what I will say is, again, if it's just you, I would say, yeah, it's safe to put 1, or you can put 0 if your pockets can afford it. If it's you and you have children that you take care of that you claim, the total amount of the household and who you claim is what should go here. Okay? Now, if you have a married couple where both couples are working or whatever, it can become complicated. And I've seen some people actually wind up owing balances, and then they're kind of wondering, hey, why do I owe a balance? And then when I further investigate or ask them a few questions, I realize is because, okay, let's say you have a married couple and then they have 2 children. One spouse was claiming like 4 because there is a total of 4 in the household, 2 spouses, 2 children. But then the other spouse was also claiming like 1 or 2. So now, collectively speaking, if you were to look at the both W-4 forms from both spouses, collectively speaking, that number was totaling like 6, maybe like 5 or 6. That's what's going to mess you up when it's time to file, because basically the number here on this line is the number that would be claimed when you file your income taxes, okay? So that's where that comes in at. So you always want that to be equal. If you're going to be picking up 4 or 5 exemptions between the total household when you file income taxes, then collectively the total number between both spouses is what line 5 should equal. So in a case where you have a married couple with 2 children, you do have the option of one spouse claiming 4, but then the other spouse should have 0 in box 5, okay? Or it could be split. One spouse can claim 2, the other spouse can claim 2. Notice it's still a total of 4. And this is just an example. Obviously, you have to figure out, your own situation. Now you also, I hope I made that clear. Hopefully I didn't confuse you, but that's the magic number. Now you have box 6, okay? Box 6 is, again, there are some cases where a taxpayer may want additional taxes to come out. And that can be for numerous reasons. Let me give you a quick example. You may have one spouse that's working. You may have one spouse that's not working, or self-employed. Let me say that. One spouse self-employed. So maybe what they want to do is they want the working spouse to add additional tax to come out to kind of pick up where the other spouse falls short by being self-employed, Again, I don't want to confuse you, but I'm just giving an example. That could be one reason. There's multiple reasons why some people would want additional taxes to come out. But that is what this line is for. So you'd say, okay, you put like $20 here. Every, check, they're going to take an additional 20 out. Or you can put $5, or you could put $60. Like, that's up to you. And you may have a unique situation where you do want additional tax. But if you don't want any additional taxes, you just simply leave this line blank. Okay? Now, line 7, this mainly applies kind of like to students, like your students who are working and they're still being claimed by you. Maybe they have a small part-time job. Maybe it's your, teenager child or whatever. In this case, if they're still claimed by you and they're making like really, really low income, I'm talking like under $10,000, where they don't even have to file an income tax, hypothetically situation, then this line, they would actually write exempt, because what that does is that tells their employer, hey, don't withhold any taxes. Okay, don't withhold any federal, let me be clear, don't withhold any federal taxes because I'm exempt. Okay, and this explanation over here explains how they're exempt, okay? Meaning, okay, last year I had a right to a refund of all federal income tax withheld because I had no tax liability. I know that line is kind of confusing, But let's just give an example of a 16-year-old working over the summer. They would really have no tax liability. Okay, so that would apply to them. Then it says, this year I expect a refund of all federal income tax withheld because I expect to have no tax liability. Okay, and again, let's still use the case of a 16-year-old working for the summer. That minimum money they're going to be making, most likely if it was really minimal, they're not going to have a tax liability. And again, they're still being claimed by you, so they would write exempt here. Okay, now I'm going to double back for a minute because I just want to also quickly say that some situations where this wasn't properly filled out, maybe some of you parents saw where your children had federal taxes coming out anyway. Yeah, that's more than likely because the word exempt wasn't put here, so taxes came out, okay? But in a case like that, guess what? Next year you can really have your tax preparer file a, tax return for your child, just so long as they're making sure to check the box that this taxpayer is claimed by another taxpayer, okay? That can get a little tricky because what you don't want is for the child's tax return to get filed as if they're claiming themselves. But the only reason why I'm giving that example is because if the child did have federal taxes come out accidentally or whatever, or exempt wasn't written here, and you want to recoup what was taken from them, that would be the way to do it, okay? So that's pretty much it, and then you sign here and you date it. I really hope that this gave a little bit of further insight into how this is filled out, okay? It's really not safe. I'm going to jump back to line 5 really quick to say you do have some people who inflate this number pretty high. They kind of maybe put it at 6 or 7 or 8, because they kind of want less taxes to come out. So hopefully you kind of understand how that works. The lower number you put on line 5, the more taxes that are going to come out. And the higher number that you put on line 5 means that the less taxes are going to come out. But then that's where you kind of stand the chance to owe a balance when you file your income taxes. So, it can definitely get a little tricky. If you'd like further clarification, I can't promise that I'm able to answer all questions submitted, but you're more than welcome to reach out. If you're watching this on one of my social medias, you can inbox me, DM me, or you can go to my website and fill out, a contact me form and ask your question. And I'll respond to you to the best of my ability. I do hope I made this clear. One last thing I want to say is this form is just for federal tax purposes. Your employer should also be giving you a state withholding form if it applies. Now, obviously, you have some states who don't pay income tax, as in the example of Florida. Okay, there would be no state tax withholding form filled out. But for other states, that do, the taxpayers do get taxed, yes, make sure you're also putting that same number of exemptions on the state side as well. Okay, so I thank you for watching, and I hope you found this informative.